The DA's Federal Elective Congress is currently underway. We're continuing with the program, but I want to delve a bit into what has been said. I'm joined now by Angelo Figgis, the Director of Research at the Orwell Socioeconomic Research Institute, as well as the SABC's political editor, Mzwandi Lembeche. To you both, welcome to the program. Let me start with you, Mr. Fick. Jane Sithole, the provincial leader of the Democratic Alliance in Mpumalanga, talking very much about the Democratic Alliance's gains, if you may. In percentages, looks good, but if you look at the actual numbers, if we refer, for example, to the by-elections in 2022, that's a different ballgame altogether.
Absolutely, and I suspect that this is also to cover over what has happened between 2019 and 2021, because in by-elections the turnouts are much lower, so we're looking at polling in the 20%, and so what looks like fantastic growth in terms of percentage may actually not be backed up by numbers of actual voters. And so the true test for the party is whether this rhetoric that says we've grown by, massive amounts of percentages bear out in something outside of a by-election when they've had a truer reflection of 79 to 80% of people who turn out to vote also voting for them, and that I think is the big challenge. Yeah,
taking a look at the resolutions, Mzwai, one that stands out is on farm murders, a call for a judicial commission into farm murders. Now, if we go back to 2019, you could argue that the Democratic Alliance had lost its white conservative vote, if I may, to the Freedom Front Plus and to Good. And now, with this call, barely a year to South Africa's next election, a call for this judicial commission into farm murders, is this a way can we deduce to woo back that vote lost by the white conservative, if I may?
Yes, well, a very good morning to you, Chriselle. Before I answer that, let me just back Angelo on the issue of the numbers. In fact, last week they actually lost in a by-election to the ANC in Western Cape. So what he has said, I mean, if you were to go with science, I'm sure that will say another story. But of course, when you look at what they are trying to do, they were very worried that they were losing the so-called core traditional voter base to parties that you have mentioned. So this kind of reconfiguration, if you like, is meant really to have your core support remain whilst you're trying to expand. In fact, I had an opportunity to speak to the leader earlier this week, where he basically said, you know what, for you to grow, you must maintain your core, because your core is the foundation upon you build from.
Angela, I want to come back to the issue of Jane Sithole is there. You have Solly Simanga, who is also there. These are senior leadership within the Democratic Alliance, but we cannot not look at what has happened within the Democratic Alliance in the recent past. The Democratic Alliance wants to emerge, what we're hearing quite strongly, as a strong a political party. They want to strengthen the Democratic Alliance. But how do you do that when you've got such a huge exodus of credible black leadership with institutional memory, who, when they leave the Democratic Alliance, very few have had anything good to say about the party?
Precisely, that conflict which goes back into the early 2010s is something that I think the party is trying to rise above and move beyond, but that's very difficult when people who are central to that conflict remain in the party and remain in very powerful positions. And very little is reflected upon how those people who are central to the choosing of those black leaders remain in the party, and nothing happens to what it says about the caliber of their choice making. So let's not forget that Lindiwe Mazibuko was, one wouldn't want to say groomed, but worked very closely with Helen Zille. Mmusi Maimane was championed by Helen Zille when he first came into office, and Helen Zille remains in a powerful position and is recontesting it. And this is what I talk about when I think of the interregnum. So Nadine Gordimer, writing in South Africa in 1981, said apartheid South Africa is caught between what Gramsci called the old that cannot die and the new that cannot be born. And in the DA, that there is very much that struggle of people like Tony Leon, Helen Zille, and various other people who are core to the party and its PFP ancestor in apartheid, and haven't yet quite been able to marry carry the party into the majority black and now increasingly majority black young aspirations in contemporary post-apartheid South Africa. They're right, yes, the ANC has failed spectacularly, but they need to ask themselves why it is that they feel the need to hold on to a core group of people if holding on to those people does not meet the aspirations of the majority of people under 28 who are also black in South Africa today.
Some of the sentiments shared, Mswai, from some of the leadership or the speakers of the Democratic Alliance just a few moments ago, talking about, this is the last time that the ANC will ever set foot, in the union buildings. Ramaphosa must go. But they don't have much time between now and the next election to perhaps sway, just not being that a political party that is able to govern in places like Tshwane or Ekurhuleni or the city of Johannesburg, but it's been done through coalitions. How do they convince the electorate that they're more than just that political party that is able to occupy position through coalitions, which have been very chaotic?
In fact, it's very interesting how the DA has been perhaps trying to navigate its governance in the coalitions. Yes, they are able to speak about Cape Town, maybe because by and large they've captured it, if I were to use that. But in Tshwane, in Johannesburg, and even recently in Ekurhuleni, they have had the chance. And South Africans or Gautengers have also been asking, has there been a difference? And then you go and speak to people of Tshwane today, and then they will tell you something perhaps the DA will not necessarily want to hear. So if where they are then given the opportunity, they may not be able to then demonstrate. Yes, you'll have places like Umngeni where perhaps also assisted by their PR, perhaps they are doing well. But in the bigger areas like the metros, so is there a difference? That is the question.